Happy Saturday. A lot of good information to share right now. That's weird. There's some weird stuff showing up. Hey, Mike, good to see you. Thank you for coming. This video today is going to be called Inflows Surge, and somehow that thing is corrupt. But basically, what we're going to talk about today is we've got a new multiplier model. I calculated the new IA multiplier for Bitcoin flows just for this week. It's kind of mind-blowing. What else? 52% of the top 25 hedge funds are invested in Bitcoin. There are 30,000 hedge funds in the world. Over half of the top 25 already in. I warned you, this is going to turn heads. This turned my head. I was optimistic maybe there'd be 3 or 5 big names. Not 1,000 big names. It is crazy. Hong Kong hasn't even moved yet. Hong Kong haven't even opened up properly to mainland China yet. We'll talk about the actual flows and the hardness and everything else. Let's go. Also, pizza. We'll talk about pizza today. A little bit of history. So thank you all as well for coming. Let's talk about where we are right now. I don't know why this thing isn't working very well. Boom, boom. Oh yeah, I know why. It's the weekend. Everything works slower, including my brain. Bitcoin monthly return so far. The month of May is up 10.5%. And we know what happens on the weekends. We've nearly erased April of minus 14%. Can't wait for that day, another 3.5%. And that could even happen this weekend because we know about T+1. We know about ETFs. We know Sunday night's always bonkers. So let's jump in. And somebody said, I hate that word bonkers. Well, I don't care. I use it. And let's go and expand our minds. I'm your Huckleberry. Thank you for being here too. And a big thank you to Sean for being in the chat as well, keeping us all safe from scammers. Now, this is the IA multiplier for the week that I just calculated. I thought to myself, okay, we had nearly $1 billion week, 900 million bucks into the 9 ETFs. All right. And the price rose. The price rose $6,300. Okay. We went from, technically, depending on exactly when you measure it, from Monday to Friday, we went from 60,700 to 67,000. But if you measured it differently, it'll be 60,300. It depends. But I took the more generous numbers. All right. 900 million flies into these ETFs. The Bitcoin price goes up $6,300. That's a 10.5% gain, which coincidentally, I didn't make this up. That's the exact same amount of gain for May. May was kind of down and flat for a long time, but it just rebounded this week because of the ETF flows that cannot be denied. Now, backing into it using my IA multiplier, I started with 21 in 2021, then 56. Guess what it is right now? Let's look at these numbers. So if you take 900 million flying in, you multiply it by 105, that gives you $94.5 billion. And you divide that by 15 million, you get the price increase of 6,300. That's the way my math works for this. And it's so weird with all these numbers. Like literally, I just noticed this now. We're up 10.5% for the month of May. Bitcoin is up 10.5% since Monday morning, crack of dawn. And the multiplier is 105, which is 10 times 10.5%. Anyway, probably nobody cares. It just melts my mind. And what's also very crazy from HODL 15, only, as I say, only 15 million will ever exist. A lot of people talk about 21 million Bitcoin. I know for a fact, probably only 14 million will ever exist. But let's be generous. Let's give it 15 million because 5 million are lost or gone. Okay. We have 19.6 in circulation, minus 5, and more Bitcoin are being sold every single day. All right, and the ETFs are holding nearly 1 million Bitcoin. So that's 1 in 15 held by the ETFs, which is startling. And it's also not too good because I know the Bitcoin maxis don't like Wall Street having so much control, etc. But anyhow, let's go a little bit further. This blew my mind. This is the top 25 hedge funds on the planet. Number 1, Citadel. Number 2, Bridgewater. We know who is behind Bridgewater. That's Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio hasn't even put his foot in the water yet, but he will. Millennium, number 3. Mariner, number 4. And then you've got all the others. Literally, The biggest players have yet to come in. There are 30,000 hedge funds on the planet. They have just been awoken to the fact that 52% of the top 25 hedge funds have now allocated to Bitcoin, some of them very significantly. Some 16%, some 5.6%, some 8%, some 2%, 1.5%. But it's significant. And again, this is only just beginning, very early. Also, we do know about the ETF market maker Shenanigans. I've been talking about them since I started doing this. And excuse some of the bad language on this. This is from Tyler. BlackRock can take as much Bitcoin as they want from Coinbase, and the transaction is recorded off-chain. I'd like to see all of the ETF wallets. This means that they can borrow Bitcoin from Coinbase to short and are not required to show any proof that they hold one-to-one. There's also the 2 to 30-day settlement, or the T+1, T+2 settlement, etc. And all settlements are done in cash. There is a million ways to manipulate this game. All I do is urge you, if you are investing in a Bitcoin ETF, invest in one that openly shares their Bitcoin address wallet so you can see that transparency. It's so important. You know Wall Street will play games. That's just what they do. Anybody that is in receipt of money will be corrupted by money. Okay? Always remember that. It's the root of all you know what. Finish that comment below. Now, back to some good news. Government handouts become real money. So back during COVIDians in 2020, there were government handouts, and some people got $1,200. Some people got many versions of $1,200. I never got any, but I know billionaires that actually got stimmy checks as well, which is bonkers. But if you had put that $1,200 in 2020 into Bitcoin when you got it, that's now worth $12,096, up 908%. You can do a lot with 12 grand. So it just shows you the power. Just in less than 4 years, what it can do. Crazy. Now, not 4 years, but 14 years ago, this is a famous story, and we cover it every year when it comes up, and a shout out to Rizzo and Bitcoin History as well, and Sanjay for sharing. Somebody bought 2 pizzas, 2 large ones, for 10,000 Bitcoin. Exactly 14 years ago today. 14 years ago, 10,000 Bitcoin. That is $670 million. That is over 2/3 of $1 billion. For 2 pizzas. Hey, Jeff, good to see you. There's got to be, there's a thing called buyer's remorse. That has to be the most extreme version of buyer's remorse in the history of the planet. All right, let's get into a bunch of charts and try weed out some intelligence from the charting data. First of all, we had the biggest ETF volume since early March. $5.65 billion in volume between the 7 largest Bitcoin ETFs on Friday alone. That is big. And these things have just all of a sudden surged back to life. To check the liveliness of any asset, always look at the volume. It's very important. And guess who hasn't joined the party yet? Hong Kong. Hong Kong started with a bang the first 3 days. They stacked a lot. And ever since then, they've been flat. This is from Marty Party. And the Chinese Bitcoin market is about to explode. The Chinese got hit hard by real estate, and now they're looking for new sources of alpha, I believe. And they want to somehow get into some yuan-backed Bitcoin version, whatever way they get it. And one of the ETFs will be opening up to mainland China in the next, hopefully, 2 to 4 weeks. And that will be big. In terms of the number of yuan per Bitcoin, it's about $447,000, or 447,000 yuan, not dollars. And we'll see where it goes. And in terms of rubles, about 6 million rubles per Bitcoin. These will be important numbers in the future. But the world is coming, all right? As I covered yesterday, hedge funds work first, mutual funds second, sovereigns third, pensions fourth, but sometimes you have early adopters move in first too. Shout out as well to the Wisconsin pension scheme that took the brave step of putting their big toe into Bitcoin. Well done. Now, a lot of people over the last, well, just before Monday, before things started to rally. Everybody's calling for the end of the Bitcoin bull run. Let's look at this chart here from Crypto Quant. Now, what this looks at is long-term holder behavior, and the chart highlights different periods where long-term holders were selling at a profit, that's the green, or at a loss, that's the purple. That's when SOPR is greater than 1 is green, and when SOPR is less than 1, it's purple. Now, this provides insights into market sentiment and trend reversals. Very important. We did have a purple cycle back in 2020 between the beginning of the bull and the late bull, and that was, again, COVIDians. That was an anomaly. So you can take out that little purple line there in the middle, the second last one, and it should just be green. We should be in a green stretch here, again, for at least another 9 to 18 months, depending on the situation. I see all the cute pizza slices in the chat. It's hilarious. But here, capitulation events do happen, and this chart shows you several bottom points. So if you cast your eye on where that number, the ratio of long-term holders, high or low profit, when that goes red, that typically means market capitulation. That is when the last long-term holders kind of give up and sell and capitulate, sometimes at a significant loss. And this coincides with the end of the bear market. But if you look at the current state of where we are today, as of May 2024, cast your eyes to that ratio, 2.82. This suggests that long-term holders are still currently in profit, some selling a little bit at a profit. In fact, that stopped about 5 days ago. And it could indicate that we are still very much in a bull market. Okay, so everybody, the bull market isn't even halfway done at this stage. Now, let's look at the amount of money coming into these ETFs, because they are driving all the Bitcoin price action. Last week, the ETFs bought 4.5 times the actual daily issuance, just in a week. The number of Bitcoin mined last week, 3,150. The number of Bitcoin bought by the ETFs, 14,389. That's basically 4.5 weeks supply, which will mean if all the Bitcoin was coming from miners, Bitcoin would be sold out way into June. Okay, just for perspective, it's bonkers. And that's just the 9 ETFs. And another view of this too. The Bitcoin ETFs have purchased 21,700 Bitcoin, $1.5 billion in the month to date, nearly $1 billion last week alone. And again, that's over 3x the actual supply from miners. This supply crunch will happen. We just don't know when exactly. Could already be happening. We're not even sure about it. Now, I have been talking a lot during this recent dip about the short-term holder cost basis, short-term holder realized price, because that is the perfect floor in a bull market, and it held true this time around as well. You can see green is the short-term holder realized price. And by the way, as time goes on, that will continue to increase, and that will continue to be the floor. And right now, it is just above 60,000. It broke 60,000 a couple of days ago. So that is extremely good news too. That's from the team at Clockwork Solutions. And there's another piece of news too. PlanB, love him or hate him, and I'm a believer in stock to flow because I've been watching it for decades for many assets. PlanB says last chance under 70,000 to buy now. Now, I know we are at 67,000, and I know people think we're going back to 60,000 and then 52,000. That's probably not going to happen. Last chance under 70? I'm not sure. But the question is, if Bitcoin does what many think it will do, and because of the perpetual bid coming in for Bitcoin, we may not get anything like the drawdowns in the past. So if we go to something like 120K, and there's nothing more than a 40% drawdown ever again, that means 70K could become a thing of the past. But we'll watch this space carefully. And another cool news as well, this is regarding energy gravity for Bitcoin. And this is a number of exactly how much energy a typical hosting rate, etc., is required to mine one Bitcoin. And right now that's $52,800 worth of energy to produce one Bitcoin. And remember, mining is a very cutthroat, competitive industry. And you've got to have the most efficient ASIC on the market to remain profitable. in the immediate aftermath of the halving, which we'll talk about now. But the good news is, with the Bitcoin price at 67K, if the firm doesn't have a lot of overhead and SG&A, etc., they can just about break even. Not making crazy money, but they can still make it. Now, let's talk about this. This is so interesting, and a shout out as well to Sanjay one more time, because he got this to me this morning. And this looks at, taking stock of, again, the hardness of Bitcoin against the backdrop of gold, which I think is really interesting for analysis. And this chart is from a firm called Incrementum. And if you look at gold, all right, since 1900, the supply of gold is actually increasing. It's accelerating. That's the gold stock on the left-hand side in tons, which is about 250,000 tons of gold on the planet. And Bitcoin, that's the dark orange. Bitcoin is flattening fast to 21 million. So the gold supply will increase out to 2030, and the Bitcoin supply is flattening, which means the actual supply is falling fast. All because of this. We now are at 0.825% inflation, or 0.85% inflation. Anyway, let's just call it 0.8% inflation of where we are right now. And that is stunningly low. And it's a good time to remind ourselves exactly why this thing is so hard, because of this Bitcoin inflation rate. And being in an asset where your fiat is debasing 8 to 14% per year, being in something that doesn't debase hardly at all. And in fact, if you take into account the amount of Bitcoin being lost every year, you could assume the inflation is actually 0%. Now, let's compare one other chart, stock to flow, because PlanB was mentioned earlier. Another thing I found very interesting, again from Incrementum, if you look at the gold stock to flow, all right, it is 50 years. What that means is it takes exactly 50 years for the gold supply to be replenished. And it's been at the stock to flow of approximately between 50 and 75 for 130 years. But now it's flattening, because as the mining technology gets better, they can dig a little bit deeper and get more gold. They can maybe pull it off asteroids in a few years, and then the price of gold will completely plummet. But the point is, the stock to flow for gold has been 50 years for 130 years. Again, the Bitcoin is now 120. It would take 120 years for the supply to be replenished, although it can never be replenished because there'll only ever be 21 million, of which 5 million are lost. So forget that. But the point is, Bitcoin is becoming really hard, really fast. Bitcoin has gone from a stock to flow of, I think it was 2 years, to 120 years in just 14 years. And it's about to get a lot harder. In the next halving cycle, it will shoot to north of 260, 280. Crazy times. Crazy times. I'll forget to put the Bitcoin playlist here later, but check out, I've got playlists on everything you can imagine. Check it out later. Let's look at the Bitcoin black hole real quick. Day 89 of these ETFs. We had a great week. Yeah, every day this week was green. 66 million. Monday, 100. Tuesday, 300. Wednesday, 260. Thursday, nearly a quarter of a billion yesterday. A really, really, really good week for the ETFs. Things are coming back. It may not look like it. We're not having the huge buys by BlackRock, which typically counterbalance the selling by Grayscale. The selling by Grayscale has completely slowed down. I'm not saying it's hit equilibrium, but they did have a lot of good positive days too. So it's going to be really hard, really soon, to get your hands on a big bag of Bitcoin. Really hard. Let's talk about how many. This little arrow is upside down, but we now have a new record high amount of dollars in the ETFs. $12.631 billion in these new ETFs. That little red line indicates the total aggregate money, and that's a new all-time high. And you saw that beautiful blue week we just had after a pretty nasty previous 40 days. Up and down and all over the place. The total money flow, again, you can see here, that pink trend line is still down. Hopefully that'll turn one day. We just have to wait. We'll need a few more big days, but it's going to be extremely difficult, again, without Grayscale dumping a lot, to be able to buy a lot. And we also have now 551,000 Bitcoin in these 9 new ETFs. It doesn't include all the ETFs in Sweden and Brazil and Canada and all the other ones. But anyway, Grayscale so far have dumped 331,000. If that didn't happen, it would be a lot harder. But when you add the 331.5 thousand dumped with the 219 net positive, you get the 551,000. And that's the trend line. Very important, that purple trend line. Thank you, The Great Escape, for Grayscale. They had their second best day ever yesterday. 31.6 million in. And what was very noticeable to me as well, from all the 13F filings, you had some massive funds allocating to Grayscale. Not BlackRock or Fidelity, Grayscale. So that's another feather in their cap too. And finally, we had 3,304 Bitcoin pulled from the system yesterday. Thank you, Moto. That is 8x the daily supply. 3 days ago, it was 10x. Yesterday, or the day before yesterday, it was 9x. Today is 8x. So we've basically, if only the miners were selling all of their Bitcoin, which they're not, and selling it, Bitcoin would be sold out till towards the end of June, just from this crazy week alone. That's how hard this thing is. So with that, thank you all for coming. I'll see you all tomorrow for the live Q&A. And hit the like on the way out. And a big thank you to TND Tesla and Sean Donnelly for keeping us all safe from scammers. Have a great Saturday, everybody. Enjoy the weather. See you soon.